is more encouraging than could have otherwise been. And part of the reason is, as we just heard in the news, it's rents and other kinds of costs that aren't tradable costs. So some of the costs that we've seen rise are airline fares, that sort of stuff, or international. And then there's things within our own economy which may not be generating economic growth. So we'll have to see how that shakes out over the next quarter.
Okay, so the country's largest rest home operator, this is Oceania Healthcare, they have reported a big profit on increased sales. What did it make?
Well, actually, it's the third largest rest home operator. Yeah,
okay.
not the biggest. There's Ryman, and of course there's MetLife Care.
Yeah.
This one is fairly large, and it recently listed on the market, I guess, about a year or so ago. And it's focused. It has a strategy to build premium aged care facility. So this is beyond sort of, retirement village atmosphere. This is where you'd go along and you'd be getting some additional care because you're in your declining health, that kind of thing. And there was a real gap in the market there. People are prepared to pay more for a premium type of facility. And so they're doing pretty well there, and they've increased their sales. So their net profit for the first half was $14.8 million. And that compares with $1.3 million the year before. It's a big increase. So they're pretty happy. And, of course, the market liked that. Their share price rose. Overall, the market dipped back a little bit today. We were down 23 points, but that's not that surprising considering how high the market's been performing. So we fell 23 points to 11,878. That's still a very high number there for the market. And the New Zealand dollar gained on that inflation data. So we're trading at 66.2 US cents, 96.7 Australian. So, yesterday, you might recall we were at 95.9.
Yep.
That's a big hike there. And 50.4 British pence.
Thanks, Nona. Nona Peltier with our business wrap. And Auckland iwi, displaced from its land for 180 years, has called a compromise on the future of Point England Reserve a win-win. Ngāti Pawa is foregoing an almost 12-hectare property development at Point England after locals raised concerns about losing green space in Tamaki Makaurau back in 2017. Instead, the iwi will get an extra 2 hectares for their marae and papakainga housing. But those who campaigned are still not convinced these plans won't disrupt the environment. Mediana Johnson reports.
The reserve will be in Ngāti Pawa's name, but co-managed with the Auckland Council. The government deal also gives Ngāti Pawa the option to purchase Auckland school sites, so they will still be able to generate income. Ngāti Pawa Iwi Trust Kaiarahi, Hayden Solomon, says it is a win-win they've achieved with the Crown.
It's a very bright future in the sense that, one, it's the biggest piece of open space land that's this close to the CBD. Two, it is our whenua. So that's important for us. It's about that cultural repatriation.
He says the iwi will restore the Tamaki River and Omaru Creek to support the native bird habitats. Minister for Treaty Negotiations Andrew Little is pleased with the deal that's been struck with the iwi.
A promise was made that we've given them an opportunity for a housing development. It was a commercial housing development, so they would have expected to yield some income from it. But the reality is this deal gives them the same value, but it's just a different format.
He says the rental income the iwi make from the Auckland school sites will replace losing the commercial development. But Julie Chambers, who campaigned against the housing development, is not convinced the revised agreement still protects the reserve.
While it seems to be that there's progress and that this won't be as damaging as the initial proposal for public housing right across the area, I'm hopeful that the footprint will be more sensitive of the open nature character of the Point England headland.
She is still concerned that road access to the marae, as detailed in the previous plan, could still destroy the natural environment. But Hayden Solomon is confident that iwi can build in harmony with the Point England surroundings.
We know how to do housing. We know how this community should look. We know how to do that in balance and in harmony with the environment.
The revised deal will be voted on by Ngāti Paoa iwi members from February the 3rd. If it is supported by iwi members and there are no overlapping claims, the Ngāti Paoa deed of settlement will go to Parliament for approval later this year. Mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi, ko Miriana Johnson tēnei.
To the US now, and Sopranos actress Annabella Sciorra has described having her arms pinned and being violently raped by the former Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein more than 25 years ago. During her evidence at Weinstein's trial in New York, the actress says she tried to fight him off and told him no after he barged into her apartment. Weinstein faces charges of rape and sexual assault relating to 2 other women, but several women are expected to testify at his trial. Harvey Weinstein has denied the allegations and says all of his sexual encounters were consensual. The Hollywood Reporter's Jeremy Barr has been in court and says Annabella Sciorra's evidence was explosive.
She's the most high profile of Weinstein's accusers that will testify in this case. And she kind of repeated the story that we had read about in the press, but in her own words and adding a lot of emotion to it. She talked about the night in 1993, and either the winter of 1993 or early 1994, when she says that Harvey Weinstein raped her after an industry party, that he barged into her apartment and sort of physically overtook her and raped her, and what she said was a very traumatic incident, and sort of went through what that did to her psychologically and mentally, and she said that she became suicidal from it. And so she sort of talked about what it did to her as a person, and then sort of provided the full story of her relationship with the Weinstein Company.
Had she met Harvey Weinstein prior to the night that she alleges this happened?
She did. She said that she met him at a party a few years prior in California, sort of casually. She said that she actually did know him when she first met him, even though she was an actress and he was a big deal, not as famous as he would become, but that she had met him casually, and that it wasn't, I think it was a fairly uncomfortable encounter, but it wasn't anything that was, I think she talked about how shocked she was about what happened, because it sort of came out of nowhere that he went from being sort of collegial and professional and networking with her to having a sort of violent attack against her.
So Harvey Weinstein's legal team has been cross-examining her. What have they focused in on?
They're trying to basically prove to the jury, as far as I can tell, that Annabella Sciorra's memory is a little bit fuzzy about the incident. They're focusing on the fact that she doesn't remember the exact date or month or year. She just knows that it was between the winter of 1993 and the first winter months of 1994. They're focusing on the fact that she doesn't remember the exact address of the building she was living in at the time. She had moved around a lot in New York City, and they're basically trying to kind of catch her in inconsistencies about things that she had said to the district attorney versus things she was saying now. And I think what we're going to hear tomorrow, when the prosecution calls a forensic psychologist, is that they're going to try to show to the jury that people that have been victims of sexual assault, that their memories, they can't always remember exactly the details of what happened. Certain things stand out in their memory, but trying to catch one of them in an inconsistency between their recollections doesn't mean that it didn't actually happen. So they're trying to basically sow doubt in the jurors' minds about whether her story is really to be believed, considering how long ago it was.
What has she said about how Harvey Weinstein spoke to her about that incident later?
Well, she said that he was very menacing, that she did confront him about it, and that he sort of made a weird kind of joke about it and said, that's what all the nice Catholic girls say. And then he said to her, this remains between you and I. And she said it was very menacing. He said his eyes were black, and she thought he was going to hit her. So she could tell that he still held some sort of physical force or threat over her, and that's why she says that she waited so long to tell people that she was scared of him. But that he hoped that she wouldn't say anything, and she didn't say anything until 2017, many, many years after the incident.
So how has Harvey Weinstein been listening to all of this?
He's been watching the testimony, looking up at the screen, not really emoting very much, not really shaking his head. The only really emotion that he showed today was when a prosecutor made a comment about him and how he was talking too much and kind of criticized his behavior, and he was shaking his head. But mostly he's sort of, he's just been watching and following, but he's not reacting when things are being said, which is a bit surprising considering how graphic some of the testimony has been about him.
Who else has been watching this trial? Who's been present?
Well, the actress Ellen Barkin was there today, and she seemed to be supporting Annabelle Sciorra. But we haven't noticed any members of Weinstein's family in attendance, and it's really just been his paid legal team and his public relations employees. But he hasn't had any sort of supporting section there.
So what do we know about his actual physical condition? Because some people may be surprised to see him entering and exiting court in a Zimmer frame, a walking aid.
Well, so he got into a car accident this past summer. He claims that he was swerving his car to avoid hitting a deer. He had a back injury, and last month he underwent back surgery on his back, and his team says that surgery has kind of left him unable to walk without the assistance of a walker. So he's used it every single day. Sort of unusually, he actually sometimes does not walk with the walker. In the morning, he generally walks down the aisle of the courthouse under the assistance of two men who walk with him and sort of help carry him along. But in the afternoon, he's been always using his walker to leave. So he actually introduced a new walker today. Previously, he had a walker that had two tennis balls in the wheels, and today he used a more advanced kind of modern version of it that he can actually sit down on. But we don't know if this is permanent, this walk, or if this is something that's only being used because it was sort of in the immediate aftermath of this surgery.
That is journalist Jeremy Barr from The Hollywood Reporter, and he's been sitting in on the Harvey Weinstein trial. It is about 12 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen, and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Let us know your thoughts on anything you've heard on the program this evening. Do get in touch if you're leaving Auckland or any of the other centres for the long weekend. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. A wide-ranging review of rugby to ensure it remains relevant and sustainable over the next decade expects to deliver its initial findings by the end of May. New Zealand Rugby announced the review today, admitting the sport is under pressure in several areas, including participation, fan engagement, elite player retention and finances. Chief Operating Officer Nikki Nicol told sports editor Stephen Hewson that rugby's structure has served it well for more than 125 years, but a review is needed to ensure the sport is fit for purpose.
There's a lot of change happening across rugby, both globally and locally, and so it's quite a dynamic environment. So when there's a lot of change, there's a lot of opportunity. And so for us, it's about setting ourselves up for how we best optimise in that environment. And the other thing is, it's been 25 years under the professional era. We've been doing a lot of change. We've been growing across rugby for many years, but time to stand back and then really have a good look across rugby and see if we've got the most efficient and effective way.
The changes you talk about, what in particular do you mean?
Well, we've got no preset view on what the changes will be, and that's why we've brought in an independent partner to help us with that. But we do know that, while we've got a lot of great things happening in rugby, we've got, 150,000 participants. We've got revenues between us of $275 million that we invest in rugby. So there's lots of really good things, but we do know things are tough. It's hard to be financially sustainable even in that environment. And we do know that our fans and our participants in rugby are always looking for new things. So we've got to adapt and be responsive to that.
Is there anything, though, that's sort of prompted it now? Because, the issues that you've raised about participation, numbers, finances, that's things that affect not only rugby but all sport, and they've been on the radar for a few years. Is this perhaps coming, or should it have been maybe undertaken somewhat earlier, this review?
Yeah, we've done reviews along the way over many years, and it's probably been bubbling along for a little while, but really as we go into the next broadcasting cycle, what we've got at the moment is an opportunity. So a lot of the relationships and contractual arrangements we have between provincial unions and super clubs We've got our collective employment agreement. All those things are up for renewal, and so this is the perfect time before we, make those partnership commitments that we have to all stand back and say, right, are we really committing to the same things again, or are we going to look at things differently? And so it's great that we've got representatives from all across those groups wanting to be involved in being part of the solution. We haven't put anything onto the agenda. What we've said is revenue and investment, so the expenditure that we have. I suppose those are great segues into what are the activities we do across rugby, and that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to make rugby better. We still want kids playing in the local communities, and we still want to be winning on the world stage with our elite teams. And so how we do that is really up for grabs. And so, it is quite wide-ranging, and, we will kind of probably eat the elephant one bite at a time, but we want to start with that. And so having some independent people looking at what we currently do and seeing if there's some different ways, looking externally at best practice, both in other sports but also in other industries, and see if they can apply those learnings, and if there's some relevance, and I think, they will be embraced.
Do you think or get a sense that rugby accepts it needs to change, or there is need for change in a lot of areas, given the way sport generally has moved?
Yeah, I think so, and certainly, the meetings we've had with our provincial unions, with our super clubs, and even within, New Zealand rugby itself, we want to be smarter, not work harder, and that's what's been happening over a period of time. It's there's some fantastic people out in the communities delivering for some fantastic programs, but we ask a lot of people, and we know some of those asks are not sustainable. So how do we support our community rugby, but also protect what's also really important, and that's winning on the world stage as well. So, how we do that is probably up for grabs, and, perfect time to stand back and have a look and, maybe look at some quite different options.
Nikki Nicol of New Zealand Rugby talking to sports editor Stephen Hewson. It's time to get the togs out and hit the beaches, as much of the country is set to bake in sweltering temperatures this weekend. Met Service says temperatures are expected to reach 30 degrees in the eastern parts of the North and South Islands. But the heat comes with a number of warnings, with fire crews on high alert as the risk of bushfires grow significantly. Our reporter Anand Zaki has more.
It could be a busy weekend for firefighters as temperatures climb following a long spell of dry weather. Fire and Emergencies Rural Fire Manager Tim Mitchell says basic things like mowing the lawn during the middle of the day poses a fire risk, and people should do them early in the morning when it's cool. But he says there are also other risks.
And I guess it's anything which has got a heat source or something hot about it. So, a muffler on a tractor is exactly the same as a muffler on a four-wheel drive vehicle or a ATV or a motorbike. So, yes, I think it's really important that people think about the vehicles and equipment that they may be using.
Mr Mitchell says some parts of the country are drier this time around compared to previous years. Fire bans are in place in Northland, Canterbury and Central Otago, which means lighting a fire could lead to 2 years in prison or a fine of up to $300,000.
We'd much rather educate the public, and we'd much rather these fires just don't occur in the first place. So we're very much around prevention for these fires occurring. The next few days are going to be very hot and warm. Think about the activities you're doing. If you don't need to do them, please don't.
Health officials are also urging people to stay hydrated during the heat. The Canterbury District Health Board says higher temperatures can be harmful, with the potential to overheat, which can be fatal. Met Service meteorologist Talia Crabtree says it's not officially a heat wave yet, as temperatures need to be well above average for 5 days to be classed as one, though the forecast suggests a heat wave is on the cards for some.
We've had a ridge of high pressure over the country for most of this week, which has kept the weather quite settled, and that's allowed just the sun to heat things up, as well as having the warm air mass over the country. That's what's contributing to making things feel humid in some areas.
Across the main centres tomorrow, Auckland is set for 26 degrees, Hamilton on 29, Tauranga 30, Wellington 24 and Christchurch at 31, although Dunedin is set to miss out tomorrow with forecast showers. But Ms Crabtree says 2 smaller towns are vying for tomorrow's hottest temperature.
At the moment, we are competing between Ashburton, who's looking at getting up to 32 degrees tomorrow, but for the North Island, if you're in the Wairarapa region, Marston also is looking at reaching 32.
Dry conditions has also meant water restrictions are in place in Ashburton, and residents in Timaru are also being asked to conserve water. The Ashburton District Council's Group Manager of Infrastructure Services, Neil McCann, says the dry weather isn't out of the ordinary yet, but is warning people to not take their water supply for granted.
We are limited by the amount of water we can draw from aquifers and from rivers to protect the environment, and it's all about just when it is dry, we use less water because the whole environment can be impacted by that.
Those wanting a cooler spell will have to wait a while, as Met Service says the warm weather is expected to continue well into next week. In Christchurch for Checkpoint, this is Anand Zaki.
A stark warning from scientists today. The famous Doomsday Clock is now closer to midnight than in any point in history due to the risks of climate change, nuclear war and disinformation. Scientists in the United States have moved their hands on the symbolic clock this morning. The ABC's James Glenday reports.
Today, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientist moves the hands of the Doomsday Clock. It is 100 seconds to midnight.
To many, the Doomsday Clock seems a relic of the Cold War. But this morning in Washington, D.C., the symbolic hands were moved from 2 minutes to 100 seconds to midnight, the closest they've ever been to catastrophe.
The world has entered into a realm of a 2-minute warning, a period when danger is high and the margin for error is low.
Rachel Bronson is the president of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, which controls the clock. She says the organisation believes the likeliness of a human-caused apocalypse has increased over the past 12 months due to nuclear threats, climate change, a lack of global leadership and disinformation campaigns. Former California Governor Jerry Brown, who serves as the Bulletin's executive chair, warned no one can afford to be complacent.
So that's why the clock has been moved forward 100 seconds before doomsday. Now people will say, that's not serious. Well, the moment is serious. How else can we wake up?
The Bulletin is particularly worried the world is sleepwalking its way through a newly unstable nuclear landscape. Iran's increased its low-enriched uranium stockpile. There's been limited progress on US efforts to reach an agreement with North Korea, and the intermediate-range nuclear treaty between the US and Russia is no more. Former President of Ireland and former UN Commissioner for Human Rights Mary Robinson hopes the world's nuclear superpowers can soon reach a new weapons deal.
I note that President Putin has explicitly said he is ready to do this. So I urge President Trump to respond in kind so both men can get down to business.
Climate change is the other issue the group says poses an existential threat, referring to heat waves and floods in India, as well as intense bushfires from the Arctic to Australia. Former UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon urged the United States to play a global leadership role in addressing the issue.
Without US leadership and participation, there will be no winners from this climate crisis. We will all become losers.
But the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists is also worried leadership is in short supply. It warns disinformation campaigns make global instability more likely and declared the trend of national leaders dismissing facts as fake news and claiming lies as truth is increasing public distrust in institutions that traditionally have provided social stability and cohesion. The group says all citizens now have a responsibility to unite and act to address what it claims is the most dangerous situation humanity has ever faced.
James Glenday reporting. And after the 6 o'clock news, has the government delivered this year for Māori?
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, ko Susana Leatawa tēnei. Health authorities in New South Wales are investigating 4 possible cases of the deadly coronavirus in Sydney. The number of people infected with the virus continues to climb. The ABC's Miles Holbrook-Work reports.
While there are no confirmed cases as yet, the New South Wales Health Department is now investigating 4 cases of the coronavirus that has killed at least 25 people. Opposition health spokesman Chris Bowen says the health system is capable of dealing with the deadly disease.
Australians are right to be concerned about the situation, but they should also be reassured in the quality of Australia's public servants and health professionals.
The last flight to Sydney from Wuhan touched down yesterday. At this stage, none of the passengers on board are being investigated for the disease. However, infected patients can take up to 14 days to present symptoms.
That report from the ABC. The Bay of Plenty Police Chief says his staff did all they could to avert a fatality after a driver refused to pull over for officers early this morning. A 45-year-old male passenger in the car died after the vehicle lost control and ploughed into a fence at Taupo. The driver, a 28-year-old man, has been charged with dangerous driving causing death. Superintendent Andy McGregor says it's very frustrating when drivers refuse to stop for police.
You imagine one of your friends and family that was coming around that corner and that car lost control when they were coming around that corner and hit them and killed them. And you'd see police at a roadblock and say, why didn't you stop them? You know, it's an expectation of the public out there that we stop these vehicles because they may kill an innocent third party.
McGregor says officers involved in this morning's incident are deeply upset. Nationals leader Simon Bridges is predicting a serious fraud office investigation into his party will bring vindication. RNZ this week revealed the SFO is planning an announcement on the case in the coming weeks. For the past 10 months, the agency has been looking into a complaint first made to police by the former National MP Jamie Lee Ross. He claims Mr Bridges asked him to collect a $100,000 donation and ensure it stays secret. But Mr Bridges has consistently denied any wrongdoing and believes the SFO inquiry will prove it.
It's cut and dried from my perspective. I've had nothing to do with it and the National Party's done everything right, and we'll see that, I think, pretty shortly.
Nationals leader Simon Bridges. Firefighters in Australia have held a minute's silence for 3 US servicemen who died in a plane crash on Thursday. The men were helping put out bushfires in the mountains south of Canberra when their aircraft came down. Investigators have begun scouring the accident site in remote bushland, but officials say it's too early to determine the cause of the crash. It's taken the death toll for Australia's bushfire season to 32, including 8 firefighters. The father of a young boy with a rare mutation of cystic fibrosis is relieved that Pharmac looks set to finally fund a drug that could significantly extend his life. Pharmac has reached a provisional agreement with the supplier of Kalydeco, and the drug could be available as early as March. Eddie Porter fought for Kalydeco to be funded for his 2.5-year-old son Otis, who has cystic fibrosis. Mr Porter told Checkpoint it gives him and other families new hope.
Kalydeco being funded is a great source of hope that other medicines for rare disorders might be funded too, that other families can share in the excitement that we're feeling right now.
The government's drug buying agency declined the initial application in 2014 due to what it said was limited evidence of its benefits. 2 people injured when a bus rolled near Queenstown on Tuesday afternoon are in a stable condition. The bus crashed while travelling on the Glenorchy-Queenstown Road, injuring 20 Chinese visitors. The Southern District Health Board says the 2 patients are progressing well. A third person remains in hospital in Christchurch but has requested privacy. A 32-year-old man has been charged with careless driving causing injury and is expected to appear in court on Monday. Auckland's Middlemore Hospital will soon have new machines to help rehabilitate Whakaari White Island burn victims, thanks to public generosity. The Middlemore Foundation said more than $100,000 was donated to the National Burn Centre in 1 week following December's public appeal. The local democracy reporting services heard the hospital had been short on some equipment needed to treat badly burnt patients. But the centre's intensive care unit will now receive a special ultrasound machine, skin grafting equipment and new entertainment devices. 25 people are still being treated in hospitals around Australia and New Zealand, including 9 at Middlemore. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 6. The Black Caps are looking forward to playing another powerhouse of international cricket in India despite being humiliated by Australia. The Black Caps begin a 5-match T20 series against India tonight in Auckland. Having been beaten 3-0 in the Test series by Australia, Williamson says getting to play India soon afterwards will be good for them.
I mean, obviously Aussie was very tough and a humbling experience, but it's funny because you do want to be playing the best. It's not losing, that's not funny, but it's funny that you desire to keep pushing your game forward, and the best way to do that is to keep learning, and often playing against the best is the best opportunity to learn.
Kane Williamson. A wide-ranging review of rugby in New Zealand is being undertaken with the sports administrators, admitting the game is under pressure. New Zealand Rugby Chief Operation Officer Nikki Nicole says there is an acceptance in the sport that change is needed, but what form that change takes is up for debate. The former Hurricane and Highlanders rugby player Michael Fatialofa has been moved out of intensive care in hospital in London after suffering a serious neck injury earlier this month, playing for Worcester. His condition remains serious, but the club says he's making good progress. Serena Williams has been knocked out of the Australian Open in the third round by Chinese tennis player Wang Xiang. She won 6-4, 6-7, 7-5 in Melbourne this afternoon. That's the news.
Tonight on Night's Country Life is back with stories of farmers in the surf and a couple of Wairarapa beekeepers who are selling honey to fund their tertiary studies, while the first Sonic Tonic of another year is dedicated to Things novel. Comes with the 7:07pm question, what's new and exciting in your life? Text 2101 or email nights@rnz.co.nz and join me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Bay of Plenty, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine, apart from isolated afternoon and evening showers about the ranges. Also areas of low cloud morning and night. For the remainder of the North Island, mainly fine, areas of low cloud morning and night. Nelson and Marlborough fine with high cloud tomorrow afternoon. Bulla to Fiordland mainly fine at first. Rain developing in Fiordland tonight, then slowly spreading north tomorrow. Some heavy falls are possible in Fiordland and southern Westland. For Canterbury, fine tonight, cloudy periods tomorrow, isolated showers south of Timaru from the afternoon. Otago and Southland, fine today, scattered showers tomorrow, possible thunderstorms for inland Otago. Showers clearing Southland tomorrow afternoon. Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy. RNZ National, it's coming up to 8 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna, and welcome to Checkpoint. If you're just joining us, I'm Lisa Owen. Ratana has long been a Labour Party stronghold, but the Prime Minister was challenged today to prove what her year of delivery has achieved for Māori. Thousands have descended on the historic pā near Whanganui this week to celebrate the birthday of Tahupōtiki Wiremu Ratana, the founder of the Ratana faith. The occasion is also considered the start of the political year, where party leaders are given a chance to speak and confront some of Māoridom's most pressing issues. Te Aniwa Hurihanganui and videographer Patrice Allen were there.
Grey skies lingered over Ratana Pā today, but that didn't hamper the spirits of mōrehu or followers of the Ratana faith as their famous brass band, draped in blue and gold, marched through the main street. Festivities to honour Tahupōtiki Wiremu Ratana have been going since Wednesday, but there was a heightened sense of excitement today as mōrehu welcomed the Prime Minister and MPs onto the pā. The Ratana Church has remained a strong political force since pledging an alliance with Labour in 1932. With the election looming, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern wasted no time during her speech to remind mōrehu of her party's long-held relationship with them.
It's always a privilege to acknowledge the relationship between Ratana and Labour that continues to this day, and to honour that by coming together as we do every year.
The government is under pressure to find a resolution to the Ihumātao land dispute before Waitangi Day, as well as tackle some of the ongoing inequities facing Māori in state care and in prison. But Ms Ardern assured mōrehu the government was making a difference for Māori.
For every Māori minister that we have in our government and that we're honoured to have in our government, whether it's Nanaya and the work that she does on Papakainga housing, whether it's Penny Henare and the work that he's doing on Māori health, do you know for the first time in New Zealand's history we now have Māori membership on our district health boards that represent the Māori population. The rest we keep working on.
National leader Simon Bridges wasn't buying the optimism. He challenged mōrehu to think about what the government had actually achieved for Māori.
The Prime Minister said it would be the year of delivery for Māori. She said that poverty and inequality between Māori and Pākehā would fall. What have they done?
A widow was also laid down by Māori Party President Shea Wilson, who told Jacinda Ardern more needed to be done to eliminate inequity, including within the police force.
The armed response teams is turning us to be like America. The biggest criminals are usually white males who wear collars and ties, but the armed response team will pick on our people.
Rangatahi were ecstatic to see the Prime Minister. They spent most of their time away from the formalities, hanging out in the Rangatahi village and meeting Jacinda Ardern. Soldier Niania and Temapara Komene plucked up the courage to introduce themselves to her.
I said hi to the Prime Minister and it was so cool because seeing her and a person is so cool. Like, she's inspiring to all of us. I just
said hello.
Yeah, we just said hello and then I told her I play in the band and then I showed her my earring. It was just so cool.
Not everyone was interested in politics though. Others, like Mariah Edmonds, simply wanted to remember the legacy of Tahu Pōtiki Wiremu Ratana, a healer and prophet, once regarded by his people as the māngai or mouthpiece of God.
Being here to celebrate our founder's birthday has always been one of unity that he has taught us. He was chosen to be a footstool for the world, and that following his teachings, we will have well-being for our land and for our people and for our mokopuna to come.
The Ratana festivities will continue over the weekend, but the pressure is not over for the government, who will need to front up again at Waitangi next month. Mo te hotaga o te ahiahi, ko te aniwa, hurihanga nui, aho.
An emergency in China, but not the world, at least not yet. That's the determination from the World Health Organization over the coronavirus outbreak. At least 25 people are dead and more than 800 have contracted the respiratory virus. 5 cities are under lockdown or partial lockdown in China as authorities do all they can to contain the spread of the disease. The BBC's John Sudworth reports.
This is the moment a city of 11 million people was effectively shut off. Paramilitary police guarding the station as all departing trains are cancelled. In the hospitals, medical staff in full body suits are treating hundreds of infected patients. While images on social media appear to show a system struggling to cope. Empty shelves in the shops and scuffles over food. We spoke to one British man now stuck inside Wuhan.
It's a very surreal feeling, you know, knowing especially that if you go outside there is potential to catch such a deadly virus.
And when you look outside the window, what's the atmosphere like? Does it feel like a city under a blanket of fear?
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm behind me here. If you saw the street here at night time where I normally live, it's a very vibrant street, lots of restaurants, and it's open until 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, and Chinese families come and they're celebrating. But if I show you out there now, it's dead.
On China's main evening news, the lead item, a New Year banquet for senior officials. President Xi Jinping makes no mention of the crisis. But the face masks on display at this Beijing station are proof the public is well aware of the risks.
Yeah, a little worried because you know that
You're wearing a mask?
Yeah, mask. This one.
And goggles as well. Are you worried about the virus?
No, because I believe my country and the government. Yes.
You believe in your government?
Yes.
This is an epidemiologist's nightmare. How do you control the spread of a dangerous virus during the biggest movement of people on the planet? Tens of millions travelling every day for at least a fortnight. And the real question is whether the closure of the city of Wuhan comes far too late to make a difference.
手掌，手指交叉。
Alongside the public health announcements, there are signs of censorship and control, and questions are being asked whether more might have been done sooner.
And that's John Sudworth reporting. The Black Caps cricketers can begin putting a tough trip to Australia behind them in Auckland tonight after a much-needed break in the wake of their thumping 3-0 Test series loss across the Tasman. New Zealand face India at Eden Park in the first of 5 T20 matches. The game begins India's 6-week stay on Kiwi shores and is followed at the same venue tomorrow by the first of 3 one-day matches between the White Ferns and South African women's teams. Cricket reporter Clay Wilson is covering tonight's match and joins me now. Clay, the Test series defeat in Australia was tough for the Black Caps fans. Some of them are still not getting over it, in my house at least. Are we expecting the New Zealand side to bounce back from this?
Well, I guess it's a different format and a different squad, but the whole tour, I guess, is a chance for New Zealand to restore the positive feeling that the team had really built up over the past few years. This really was a result in Australia no one saw coming. We've talked to the Black Caps this week, and Kane Williamson yesterday talked about it's a bit of a balance. They want to move on and forget it, but at the same time they want to make sure they learn the lessons from that defeat. So we'll see. It's going to be a different squad, as I said, and a number of new faces, so those guys won't have the scars of Australia, and there'll be a few experienced names hanging around to be motivated to bounce back, but also New Zealand being back on home soil, a change in format, which New Zealand beat India 2-1 in T20s last summer. So they've got that behind them as well. So a good chance. We won't have a gauge until probably the tests come around again, which is at the end of the tour. But I guess we'll get a pretty good gauge early on about if the Black Caps are going to match it with this Indian side.
So a good chance we won't be humbled, as Kane Williamson puts it. He said it was a humbling experience to lose.
Well, you would hope not. It's probably, Black Caps fans are pretty disappointed as it is about what happened in Australia. So if a similar result or similar things happen on home soil, it can only be worse, I guess.
So what are the changes that we will see to the New Zealand squad?
So there's only 5 members of the Test squad hanging around, so only 5 members with those memories in their minds. A number of players still out injured. Trent Bolt still out injured with his broken finger. Lockie Ferguson, the pace bowler, still out with his calf injury, and Matt Henry also out. So we're going to see a number of new faces come back in, or guys perhaps that are familiar but are new to the squad for this series. Martin Guptill, Colin Munro, Ish Sodhi, guys like that people will know. The main new name back, and it's a bit of a new old name, is Hamish Bennett. He's a fast bowler from Wellington. He's come back in. He's had sort of a bit of a late career revival and has forced his way back into the team. He's a name people will know. So he's going to come back in. I expect him probably to play tonight, given how well he's been playing with white ball for Wellington. So, yeah, a fair bit of change in that squad.
So Kane Williamson, a lot of chatter about his captaincy. So what are the Black Caps saying about his leadership?
Well, he was asked about it at decent length yesterday, and he sort of reiterated that he still loves the job and he still wants to do it, but he's open to change if that's what's best for the team. There is set to be a review of this Australian tour, so if it comes out of the review and there's been noises out of New Zealand cricket that he could perhaps step down from, say, the T20 format and just captain the one-dayers and the tests, and that might be good for him, but he doesn't seem that keen about it, which sort of makes sense. He's a guy that probably doesn't like to just give up when
but they all say they'll step down if that's what's best for the team, don't they? That's kind of like the line that you feel that the publicist gives them to say.
Well, Kane Williamson especially, he's the master at referring back to the team when speaking about himself, so he probably wasn't going to go into huge depth, but he certainly didn't rule it out. I don't see it happening across all formats, but perhaps in the T20 format we might see him step aside in some capacity.
OK, we've also have a tour by the South African women's team starting tomorrow, so what will the White Ferns be hoping for in these matches?
So we're going to have 3 one-day matches first, and then it's going to be followed by 5 T20s. This is basically the lead-in for both teams to the T20 World Cup, which is starting in Australia later next month. So for the White Ferns, it's a bit of a fresh start, and Susie Bates, one of the well-known players in the team, said this week. We've got a new captain in Sophie Devine, who's just been in stunning form in Australia and back here for Wellington. She's going to be the captain. A new coach now entrenched in Bob Carter. He's come on, and I tried to bring some new faces into the fold as well. We've got Jess Kerr, the sister of Amelia Kerr. We've got a couple of sisters in there now, so some new faces. And this White Ferns team have definitely underperformed in the last couple of years, probably last 2 or 3 years, at world events, World Cups. So they're very determined, spoken about that this week. about having a good preparation and and putting on a good account of themselves in the T20 World Cup coming up pretty shortly.
Should I put you on the spot and ask you whether they should move the boundaries back for women's cricket?
Well, if Sophie Devine's batting...
Anything to go by?
Looks like it, yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
thanks for that, Clay. Clay Wilson, who will be reporting on the cricket this evening. It is almost 21 minutes after 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. The International Court of Justice says Myanmar has caused irreparable damage to the rights of the Rohingya. The UN's top court has ordered measures be put in place to prevent the genocide of the minority Rohingya. But the country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the ruling distorts the picture of the situation. Thousands of the Rohingya died and more than 700,000 fled to Bangladesh during an army crackdown in 2017. The BBC's Anna Holligan reports.
Myanmar must take all measures.
The judges recognise the Rohingya as a Muslim minority at risk of extinction and in urgent need of protection. There are some 600,000 Rohingya still in Rakhine State. They said Myanmar must stop any killings or acts to prevent births, ensure its military doesn't commit genocidal crimes, and prevent the destruction of evidence of genocide. Plus, it must report on compliance with those measures within 4 months and again every 6 months until the court reaches its final judgment on whether Myanmar is guilty of deliberately trying to destroy an entire ethnic group. This international lawsuit was brought by the Gambia. The country's lawyer, Paul Reichler, told the BBC the decision was hugely significant.
It is a historic day for international law and for the protection of human rights of vulnerable peoples. I think today you can say that the International Court of Justice lived up to its name.
Last month, Myanmar's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi argued that international intervention was unnecessary and would exacerbate tensions in the fragile state. By taking part in the proceedings, Ms Suu Kyi has in effect recognised the court's legitimacy, and it will now be difficult for Myanmar to ignore its ruling. And while the judges don't have any enforcement powers, today's decision has increased pressure on the international community not to ignore what's happening.
Anna Holligan reporting. American, Canadian and Australian firefighters have held a minute's silence in Sydney to honour their 3 colleagues who were killed in a water tanker crash yesterday. On the south coast of New South Wales, communities are counting the cost after another difficult day of fire activity. The New South Wales Rural Fire Service says that 6 firefighters have suffered serious injuries when a water tanker rolled while fighting a fire in Eurobodalla. The ABC's Madeline Jenner reports.
At a small gathering in Sydney, Rural Fire Service Commissioner Shane Fitzsimmons paid tribute to more than 30 US and Canadian firefighters who are heading home after fighting fires in New South Wales.
The fact that you all put your hand up knowing that you would come here and spend time here in Australia during Christmas and New Year, during some of the most difficult and unprecedented firefighting conditions, speaks volumes of your commitment and dedication.
A minute's silence was held for the 3 US specialist firefighters who died when a water tanker aircraft crashed in the Snowy Mountains yesterday. That crash is still being investigated, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison has spoken today with US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to offer his condolences. On the south coast, locals are still assessing the damage from yesterday's fires. The New South Wales Rural Fire Service says 6 firefighters suffered serious injuries when a water tanker rolled while they were fighting a fire in Eurobodalla on the south coast. There are also unconfirmed reports that around 10 houses have been lost around Moruya and Bermagui. Liz Innes is the Mayor of Eurobodalla Shire.
Well, yesterday was a horrific day here in Eurobodalla. The winds were incredibly gale force. It was a hot hell of a day. And, you know, there was an incredible amount of effort that went in by our firefighters, and it is an absolute credit to them that we didn't see more houses lost. We do know that we have lost houses in the Moruya area and also further south.
One of the areas affected yesterday was a local rubbish tip. Eurobodalla Shire now has 2 tips largely destroyed by fires, and that's a big problem as people try to clear burnt areas and get back to normal life.
The message we're saying to people is, please, if you can hold on to your waste just for the time being until we can sort some of these issues out. Obviously, there's going to be an enormous amount of waste that we're going to have to deal with going forward. So until we can sort of get on top of this, we're just asking people for patience.
In the small town of Bermagui, Steve Hope watched the fires get very close yesterday.
The internet was down, we had no communications, so we couldn't look at the RFS site, that we couldn't get any information, and we could see this thing getting closer and closer, and it looked like the game was up.
Steve Hope runs a local cafe and says he should normally be headed into a busy long weekend. But the tourists are staying away.
We're running at about a seventh of our business. And, you know, I was just so heartened and amazed on the weekend. We had folks who I didn't recognise who'd come from somewhere else, and they'd come to Burmie to have a holiday, still smoky, still, you know, the weather was lousy, and they said, we decided to come and spend some money. And God bless those people. It's just fantastic. They could have gone anywhere and had a nice time, but they came here and it was pretty crap.
Further south in Eden, the community is hoping tourists will start coming back, allowing them to get a little summer trade. Today, a cruise ship has docked in Eden, the first to come back since the New Year's Eve bushfires. Bega Mayor Christy McBain.
To get those cruise ships back into the area will be fantastic for local business, especially if they're going to be off the ship, going through our main street, starting to go on some of our tours again. This ship has about 2,500 people on board, so it'd be fantastic to get those people circulating in Eden.
Christy McBain is encouraging travellers to head back into the fire-affected areas as a way of showing support. And while they may not be the most popular institutions in the country right now, one bank, NAB, is doing its best to improve its image and giving employees one extra day of annual leave to take a long weekend and visit a fire-affected area.
That was Madeline Jenner reporting. And some traffic news now. State Highway 1 in Northland is closed at Whakapara, just north of Whangarei, due to a serious crash. Follow the detour and be prepared for delays if you're driving that way. A specialist care facility in England is using virtual reality to help children with autism. The technology is helping young people with the condition make sense of the real world in a safe space. Ash Rowe reports.
Virtual reality and data mining are being used to help children and young people with some of the most severe forms of autism. Staff at this specialist care facility in Berkshire, England, are discovering the benefits of introducing children to new environments using VR headsets. Nuno Guerrero is the computing teacher at Prior's Court.
Our young people, they have very difficulties with sensory issues, so they can find it overwhelming going for very busy places or transition to a new place, so they like what is familiar, they like their routine. So the VR sets allow them to experience new realities and probably help them with transitions when they have to face a new place.
Jonathan Curtis says the new tech is a great tool which helps his son Dexter to focus.
Dexter finds it very hard to process the world around him, and when he's in VR it allows him to focus much more. He has a lot more concentration and less anxiety, and he enables him to experience things which would otherwise be very difficult for him to do.
The registered charity have also set up a data mining project called Prior Insight to help those who are non-verbal and unable to communicate their needs. Project leader Elaine Hudgell says they're aiming to collect large quantities of information on the young people using their services, improving the care they can provide through detailed reports.
That information looks at things like incidents, seizure activity, food and drink input, toiletry input, personal care, any activities they've done, and any sleep data. We're hoping to not only increase our knowledge and awareness about the world of young people with autism at Prior's Court, but we're also hoping to be able to, in time, share that with the wider autism world.
That report from Ash Rowe. And that's all we've got time for this evening. If you're getting a long weekend, have a fab one and watch out for that blistering sun. We, though, will be back on Monday.
6:30. A teacher in the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the coronavirus originated, says the usual bustling streets are empty. 26 people are confirmed dead. The Bay of Plenty police chief says his staff did all they could to avoid a fatality after a driver crashed and caused the death of his passenger whilst failing to stop for officers this morning. 2 people injured when a tour bus rolled near Queenstown on Tuesday are in a stable condition. And an Auckland iwi displaced from its land for 180 years says a compromise on the future of Point England Reserve is a win-win. Those are the headlines. Our next news will be at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
2 factors there. One, that visiting drivers need to take more notice of the mirror thing that hangs off the car and look in it.
Yes.
And Kiwis need to be a little more patient, I think.
Lately with me, Karen Hayes, your late night eye on the latest headlines and the people who are making them.
They don't